She's an inspiration. Yeah, she's awesome.
Wants to know everything that's going on in the cookie.
That's awesome.
I don't know anything.
Were you still doing that?
I just know what music we're singing.
I don't even know that. I have to show up 15 minutes early so I can get myself together to get my music and go, what are we singing this Sunday?
Get Harriet to add your calendar, add her calendar to your iPhone calendar, whatever you've got. And it has, you automatically appears when we're rehearsing, what we're rehearsing, when we're singing, and what we're singing, and it'll be in your calendar.
Right.
She publishes it. Ask Harriet to help you.
Oh, that would be great. Oh, okay, I'll do that. Okay, so we're just now at this point waiting for Rick to come back up from listening to the doorbell.
So I go find Rick, and then you can send somebody to find me.
No. So this should be like, I teach senior yoga at the YMCA on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 a.m. And the first time we got over 10 people, I said, I'm bringing you cookies next time. Then we got over 15 people, and I had to bring them cookies again. So I brought cookies, but we still don't have 10 people. Oh, no, look, maybe we do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. We have 13 people, so you all deserve chocolate cookies out of the daytime.
Well,
You
where's
all-
the wine?
Towns, you all go right up there and serve yourself wine and cheese and chocolate cookies.
Thank you, that sounds good.
Thank you.
We may fall asleep, we just got back.
We're glad you're here. Welcome home.
Thank you.
So
want us
did
to
you
wake
read
you
the
up?
patron saint of liars?
Huh?
Did you read the patron saint of liars?
I haven't finished it, Bob has, he told me about the ending.
Okay, good. Very good.
Every time I would start to try to finish, I'd fall asleep,
Oh,
but it was really good.
Arrived,
I mean,
we
what
ordered it, but they said there would be a delay, and it arrived 2 days after we had left. We've been gone for 3 weeks.
Oh,
so
okay,
we've
got
been
it.
reading it in the last 3 days.
Okay. Well, we're glad you're here.
But it's a
I
quick,
read it
it's a
several
quick,
years
easy
ago.
read, though.
Yeah, I read it several years ago and read it again this time too.
I
It's
couldn't
not a quick
remember
use.
the ending. I remembered everything that happened in between, but I had blocked that ending. I couldn't remember it until I got there. And I went,
Right.
Getting how the ending works.
Okay, so I have 14 questions, and we might not get to all of them, but let's start. In The Patron Saint of Liars, the author uses the voices of Rose, Sun, and Cecilia, or Sissy, to tell the story. How does each voice reveal a distinct and unique character, and is each voice believable? That is open to anybody who wants to answer that question.
I think that Rose is the tough one. Rose, you sort of knew, when she was reciting, you knew. Particularly when you got to Sissy, you just sitting there, well, she doesn't give a hoot about her, well, I shouldn't say it that way, but no contact with her daughter, and you're sitting there, I couldn't figure out, that's when I began to lose, what is her motivation now? She got married, she had the baby, but she just withdraws.
I mean,
That's the part I didn't think I got.
I thought there was a progressive insight as you go through the three of them, until that point where Sissy clamps down and says she's not going to look at the past, which begins to sound like her mother. So, I mean, each of those three
Yeah.
seems to build, they don't hear each other's narratives, which is one of the points, I guess.
Right.
But, well, I'll stop there.
I thought Rose was mentally ill from the beginning, and it just surprised me that she
I'm sorry, I
couldn't
can't
live.
hear
I thought she was mentally ill,
Hmm.
and it surprised me that she didn't have any more self-awareness as she lived. You know, there were so many lessons for her to learn.
Mhm.
Okay,
She-
I'll tell
She
you.
never
Doug is downstairs, he
Okay.
can't get in.
Okay.
Thank you, Rick.
Okay.
Go ahead,
Well,
Helen.
that just surprised me that she could live that long and stay as sick as she was about relationships, about people, about herself, about her mother.
Rose.
All, Rose,
You're talking about Rose.
all in denial, denial, denial.
She's waiting for God's message.
Right. And does it ever come?
Well, she interprets it, a lot of them interpret.
She
what God
interprets
said.
lots of signs, which we might not think are signs.
God doesn't send us signs.
Well, I know.
God might send us signs. What about this side of the room? I haven't heard anything from here about you people talking about the 3 different voices that reveal a distinct and unique character. Is each voice believable?
I enjoyed the son's voice. Like, I thought that he was the most empathetic of all the characters. I enjoyed,
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
oh, I'm sorry. I enjoyed the son, reading the middle section. I thought he was very empathetic. I liked, I enjoyed him. I feel like Rose had a strong voice, but I didn't like what she was saying a lot of the time.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't have much empathy for her.
Yeah. Anybody else from this side of the room?
Well, I might add that, I don't know if you can, I wouldn't say you could believe any of them. They were telling the story from their perspective.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it filled in little gaps. You know, the way that Rose perceived something and the way that Sissy perceived something were not the same.
Right.
You know? So it's not like 1 leads to 2 leads to 3, but like, remember those overlays where you would, with each project up to the wall, you would
Yeah.
overlay
Yeah,
and
yeah.
overlay. You put them all over, then you might get a more clear story.
Right.
Which was somewhere in between any of the 3.
Right.
Right. Okay, discuss the many references to leaving, to breaking connections to home, to breaking connections to family and responsibilities. Who are the leavers and who are the ones left? Who turns out to be a stayer and why is that important?
I think Sissy's the one that was gonna stay, and she's got her new friend,
Yeah,
and realizes that she fills a need in this new friend that was really looking to her to maybe, she was gonna stay herself.
mm-hmm,
And son was a stayer before he even had a friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, right,
But not with his family, though. I got the impression that he left his family and didn't have contact with them.
Son,
Yeah.
That was sad.
well, when his girlfriend died,
Yeah.
right.
and then I think his family died. Didn't his parents die?
No, it happened to his
No,
parents.
no, okay, maybe not.
No, he left because he felt guilty about
About
her
her
death.
death.
So Sissy is the stayer, Cecilia.
I was talking about the first Cecilia.
The first Cecilia, who was tattooed on his arm.
Yes, right.
Right, yeah.
I found the son's story the most convincing, most interesting, and above all, the most acute in his judgment of Rose. At one point he says, Rose is a leaver who doesn't understand those who are left behind.
Right,
Yeah.
And therein to me is the essential tragedy
of the story, right.
Who said that?
Son.
Son said that about Rose,
Rose, yeah.
yeah,
Now, part of the problem I had, both him and Cecilia, he is an uneducated man. He's a handyman.
right,
And yet he speaks not in a rube's voice, a handyman's voice. He speaks like an omniscient narrator. He speaks like Patchett herself. I would have been more convinced just to have her give us an omniscient viewpoint
instead of going through Son,
and depict Son that way. Remember, Cecilia is 15 years old. Her narrative, therefore, is to me moving, poignant, convincing, except that no teenager writes the way Cecilia writes.
Right, exactly.
But I think Patchett made, to me, a strategic error in not just saying, this is an omniscient novel from beginning to end. I'm gonna enter Rose's head, I'm gonna enter Son's head, I'm gonna enter Cecilia's head, and lives, and it would have been, in my view, a greater novel.
Yeah,
I have a question for you about that. I didn't think of it as any of the three of them writing. I thought of it as thinking. This is what they thought, not what you'd have to be much more eloquent to write that, but you don't have to be eloquent to think.
Well,
But also, he, at one point, when he was in high school, he was told that he should go to college.
right,
And so evidently, he has
Yeah.
some native intelligence and sort of middle-class parents, right, sort of, so
Right.
that,
Contractor, yeah.
yeah, so to some extent,
But he
I
is-
didn't find him unbelievable.
well, I found him convincing as could be.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I simply am asking the question, he is called the narrator. That's the very description of him.
right,
He is the narrator of his story, as Cecilia is the narrator of her story,
Right.
as Rose is the narrator of her story.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I couldn't conceive of him as being a writer.
Because
He could, I agree with you, he could think that way, you don't have to be eloquent to think. But
but
I
part of-
called him out only a couple of times using what I would call countrified speech.
But none
Yeah.
of them wrote. None of them wrote anything.
and that's part of the
I mean,
problem.
they weren't
Because they never,
writers.
there was no communication, I mean.
So I didn't believe that they wrote those chapters.
No, I don't think so.
But what's the
either.
difference between a narrator and a writer?
It's the voice in which the story is told.
And
I
who's telling
think
the
it's just
story?
the voice, I just took it to be the voice of the person telling the story, or how they believed the story to be. And their voice, not their talent in expression. I don't know, maybe that, I should study that some.
I thought Son, I mean, actually, what he thought was not, he had deep insights at times,
Oh, yeah.
but he was an awkward man, and a lot of times he just sheared off, so.
Yeah.
That's a good point, he backed off,
Yeah.
yeah, and the fact that they don't tell each other their narratives, or
right,
the one letter that comes is maybe disastrous, maybe not, it's hard, I think it's ambiguous, you know.
Right.
The letter that comes, from, what's his name?
First
From,
husband.
from,
Thomas,
from her father, from
Thomas.
Cecilia's
Yeah.
actual father.
Cecilia's actual father, right,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, on to the next question. When first pregnant, Rose looks for a place where women had babies and left them behind, like pieces of furniture too heavy to move. Does her concept of a child evolve during her drive to Kentucky or upon her arrival at St. Elizabeth's or during the months after her delivery? Is there evidence of a changing attitude after Sissy is born?
It was when her roommate Angie had the baby, that's when it all changed. I
And the
think.
woman who had the twins and wanted
Yeah.
to keep for an hour, she wanted them
Right.
so badly, just for
Right.
an hour.
Just for an hour, right,
Mhm.
that was the change. So it was, became, instead of an abstract, it became a reality that affected her.
But it didn't keep, or it didn't take, so to speak.
It didn't take really well, did it?
Maybe she'd become a stayer by that time, and this was a way to stay.
Well, that's what she
If
thought.
she
To
gave
keep
the
her baby.
away, she would have to leave.
Right, so she kept the baby, married son, she could stay.
But she
Yeah.
wasn't that interested in her
But she
husband
wasn't-
or her daughter.
No,
No,
she
no.
wasn't, was she?
But she just needed a way to stay, I think.
And that gave her that
So
way.
maybe
She was
that's-
emotionally detached in some respect throughout. You know, it was almost it's not Asperger's or autism maybe, but there was something that she did not connect.
Except for
Emotionally.
I'm sorry.
I think the one thing she was attached to was her work.
Was what?
Yeah,
Her work.
Her work.
yeah,
That's what
right.
became
Yeah.
very
The
important
food.
for her.
How about her
Sister
mother?
Right.
Bernadette.
Do you
And-
think she was attached to her mother?
Or did she learn from her mother disattachment? Was her, how connected was her mother to her?
She been writing to her mother?
We learned that
But-
only at the end,
Yes.
however.
Right,
How long, we're assuming she has left mother behind once and for all.
But we know she's been writing mother,
Yeah, well, I'm saying that's the great brilliance of her plot.
yeah.
That Patchett brings back in, look, this woman, whom we thought was totally self-absorbed, has been writing her mother every week.
right. And we learned that near the end.
Got the last 5 pages.
Yeah, exactly.
But, she also started leaving the clues at the end.
Yeah,
You know, come get me, or, you know, here I am.
right,
And her mother couldn't figure it out, but her
She included her
husband
address.
did.
yeah.
Or, no, I think it was just the postmarks.
Was
The
it just?
postmarks.
She could have, yeah.
She kept having her they said early in the thing, she would occasionally send things to her mother, but she'd find people that were going to Chicago was one example. Well, would you mail these when you get to Chicago? And she'd been doing that for most of the time in the last year or so. I think it said that she suddenly was just sending them all from that little town in Kentucky.
Habit.
Habit. I love the name
I love
Habit,
it.
Kentucky.
The-
That was
the
awesome.
nun's habit.
Yes, Habit. It was great.
The mother gave Thomas the address, and he wrote, and it got to the house, so the mother knew the house.
Right,
The mother knew, she had told her where she was,
I remember.
because Thomas wrote a letter, and it got there.
it got there. Right.
for-
See you next week.
Yeah.
No, you won't.
Yeah, right.
Of course, it's at that point that Rose takes her final flight.
Yeah.
She's not
Right.
about to let
She does
Thomas
not
catch up
want-
with her.
Correct. Exactly. Okay.
Well, I would just add to that, there's different ways to leave your child behind.
Yes.
And
Right.
she gave her child away,
Yes.
even though she stayed with her.
Correct.
She gave her child away first to son.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, okay, you take care of her, and then gave her child away to all the other mothers, you know, when she was under 5 years old, and everybody was just treating her.
Everybody was treated right.
Elizabeth.
Right.
And then that was her big grief, you know, as a 15-year-old.
Right.
But her it seems to me where she finds an emotional outlet is Sister Bernadette. Was that her name?
No. Was it
Evangeline?
Evangeline.
Evangeline, right.
Evangeline's a great character.
Yeah, but, and she knows all these mysterious things, so she never has her own narrative.
Right.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, it would be nice if we had heard from her.
Maybe we'll have another book.
Maybe so.
She's bearing everybody else's,
Right.
confessions in a sense.
Yeah.
And she's, a seer too, so she
Yes.
knows
Right.
a lot of stuff that people haven't even told her.
Well, and she's a stigmatist as well.
A what?
Stigmatist.
What does
Now,
that
she
mean?
has that sword.
That's
in her
right.
hand
The
yes,
stigmata.
right.
That never heals.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just bleeds sometimes, she says.
Yes, right.
But she doesn't recognize what it is, because she said, if you ever thought about being a saint, then that would mean you weren't one.
Right.
So she just thinks her hand is sore.
No, I
Right.
think she knows, but she doesn't want to say in some ways.
I think she was one of the most interesting characters.
Yeah.
I thought she was
think
too.
so, too.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
Go
I
ahead.
agree. Well, I agree.
Yeah, it would have been nice to hear part of the story from her perspective.
But it would have been inarticulate if you true to the character.
Possibly. Yeah.
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 Well,
Okay.
I wanted her to be more challenging to.
Elizabeth?
Right, to Rose and to,
Oh,
well, I mean, if she knew what was going on, and she claimed that she knew,
right.
but she never, that we know of, said, look, you can't do this, or you can't be married to 2 people at the same time.
I don't
Right.
think she knew that.
Eh,
Or
Have you ever
even
been to
your
a
child.
therapist?
Well, she
They
does-
don't tell you.
They don't tell you anything. They let you figure it out yourself. Right.
Lead you to the water.
You can lead them to the water, but you can't make them drink.
Yeah.
Exactly.
She
Okay.
never abandons her Catholicism.
No, she doesn't. She doesn't. Okay, next question. Beginning with Rose's first lie of omission, which is not telling Thomas She is pregnant by him, her first husband. The lies, discuss the lies and the liars in the novel. Relate the last lie, Son's tie to Sissy, to the structure of the novel and to the cycle of lies. You might ask, are all lies equal? So what do we have to say about the lies?
They're not equal according to Forrest Gump.
No, they're not, you're right.
Just a little white lie.
The,
Right.
I think Son's lie, I was telling her, I don't know if he had quite figured it out. It was almost like he was, okay, here's this other husband. But, and he began to think maybe she was already pregnant, but I don't think he thought, well, she was pregnant by her first husband.
Oh,
Right.
no,
But-
I think he
wanted
knew.
Sissy to say you're 14 so that, and he said, but so it won't hurt his feelings that she immediately went and got pregnant. But, he didn't, it was like he was on the verge of figuring it out.
Are
It
you
wasn't
saying
like-
Son was on the verge of figuring it out?
No, I think he figured it out. Remember that long conversation the two men had on the porch, by themselves?
Yeah, yeah.
And he knew he wasn't the biological.
Oh, he knew that.
Right.
I don't know if
But
knew.
he didn't know who the father was,
Right.
maybe,
No, right.
possibly.
Well, he was a liar though, way before then. He bribed the judge to marry him.
Right.
Wow, that's pretty straightforward.
He was a liar. He was a liar.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Rose was a liar and she made everyone who was around her into a liar, right? Because when she like forced the naming of the child to be Cecilia.
Cecilia.
And she was like, I'm now forcing you to lie to your daughter for the rest of her life.
Right.
I think Son was a liar before though. I mean, I liked Son, he was a very sympathetic character, but when the first Cecilia died, he let that story, that could kind
Oh,
of made up
sure.
a story about how
Yeah,
the death went, and that was not how the death went.
right.
But that's, yeah, that's
Do
a
you think it
different
was a
kind of
sense of his guilt that he was carrying?
I mean, maybe, but I think he knew that the story was being spun in such a way that he was more sympathetic than he felt like he needed to be. So, but I don't think it has the equal weight maybe of some of the other lies, like the initial lie of omission. Or she didn't
Right.
tell.
Yeah, Rose was not the only liar in this book. She might be what was called the patron saint of liars, but she was not the only liar in the book.
Everybody was.
Everybody lied. Everybody lies, don't they?
The whole social fabric would fall into pieces
If
if we didn't lie.
if we didn't have
You
lies.
told me what I looked like,
Exactly.
you'd crush me to death.
Exactly.
Lie about me.
Exactly. Okay, next question. Contrast the picture of Southern California with that of St. Elizabeth's in Habit, Kentucky. How does the author achieve the sense of place? Is one place more real than the other? Is one place more allegorical?
Habit is more allegorical.
I was just gonna say California was
I
on.
was too. I
Okay,
was
so
too.
why is Habit more
Well,
allegorical?
starting with the spring, and
Right,
then you have this guy named Sun,
right.
which is fascinating. And habit itself has all, the nun's habits, the habitual behaviors, the habitual lying even. And a whole bunch of things. I had some notes, but I left my notebook behind, so I can't remember.
Okay, well, you're doing well without your notebook. You're doing well without your notebook. Yeah.
I love the phrase habitual liars.
Yeah, exactly.
It just became a habit.
Yeah.
And so what about, you said that you thought California was more allegorical.
See, no one really, we never really got much real story about California.
No.
It was fleeting, but California represented not here. It's just not a place anywhere near or like Habit, Kentucky. It was some far off dreamland.
No, I lived in Southern California and.
I know, but to the people in the book,
Well, but,
it was
but
a
the other people,
long
no,
way.
right, the other people
Nobody
didn't know about it.
ever went
But,
there,
but,
and people from there escaped to
Mhm.
Kentucky.
mhm.
Why in the world did we do that?
Yeah, it certainly seemed, from the point of view of habit, it seems allegorical and remote, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly, right,
From-
exactly.
Like Babylon or something.
Any response from this side of the room?
Well, it's not so much the place, but I'm just thinking more about Rose's mother now. I was very sympathetic to her at first. I still am, but I was thinking like how many, she always referenced her doing the makeup.
Yes, right.
And
Yeah.
it's like maybe maybe there was too much emphasis on like image with her mother. Like, I don't know, maybe that's where some detachment comes from. I don't know. And that kind of goes in with my stereotype of Southern California.
There you go. Okay.
Well, what was the name of her friend that came in at the end, Sissy's friend? Lorraine. So there's
Lorraine.
a great, remember when Lorraine comes in and says she wants to, do her hair?
Oh, yeah.
And then
Yes.
she says she's gonna fix, which is the exact same thing that her mom used to tell people after.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought, there's something there, you know, it's like, her mother sort of coming back into the,
So
at least
that
a
represents
comparison
a lie
between,
too.
yeah.
The makeup and the hair and all that's another lie or another cover-up.
Yeah,
A facade.
Well, Rose doesn't want to be thought pretty because she doesn't want to be reduced to her sexuality,
Right,
to her appearance.
right.
She doesn't want to be confined by other people's conception of her. And though she's always breaking boundaries, and that means in her case, always leaving, always fleeing. She's like Huck Finn striking out for the territories.
Right.
Except she's running east, he runs west. And when she starts driving, she says, I don't know where I'm going. I'm just driving.
Yes, I'm just driving, and she ends up in Habit, Kentucky.
There were certain things that you just mentioned that I really admired about her. The not wanting to be her exterior, wanting to be, not that be the first thought in everybody's mind when they knew her. So her accomplishments and what she did, her daring, her whatever, she wanted to play down her exterior, and I thought, that's admirable.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I got into the book, I wasn't admiring her anymore.
I mean, no, whenever she was described, she was always described as beautiful, even though when she wasn't trying to be.
Right,
So there was something there, some kind of inner beauty that, people saw, and, you know, she was a beautiful person, she didn't have
Who
to work
didn't
at
need
it.
makeup
right,
to
Right.
be beautiful.
Right.
She just
Yeah.
put her hair behind her ear and everybody thought it was
Yeah.
good.
right.
I mean, she wasn't all bad, but
So she
Okay.
does the
Could've been
lowliest
better.
work at St. Elizabeth's. She's a cook,
for
Right,
free.
yeah, yeah.
and a good one, yeah.
So
Okay.
She's a nurturer in lots of ways, but not to.
Right.
Keeping the people who ought to be close to her at an arm's length, yeah.
Right. Question number 7. We have 14, so this will be halfway through, so we can take a potty break, a wine, and cookies. You all people, I got up at 5 o'clock this morning to make those cookies. You need to eat
They're
them.
really good, I had them.
They're chocolate crinkle cookies, and I
They're
had to
really
roll
good.
them around in powdered sugar and get my hands all powdered sugary. So you need to eat them, because I don't want to take them home, because Brian and I will become big as refrigerators, and we don't want to do that. So here is question number 7. Describe the mother-daughter relationship, we might have already done this, between Rose and her mother. Is there evidence that Rose's mother is a good and loving mother? How is the relationship Rose has with Cecilia, or Sissy, different, and why? So the mother-daughter relationship between Rose and her mother and Rose and her daughter. Sissy.
I thought the mother was okay. I mean, she seemed to try to, Rose's mother,
Rose's mother.
yeah.
No.
She was
But
a
I
good
like the one
mother.
About the makeup and about
She I mean, she did makeup for a living, I mean, that's how she
She
made
was
her
a dye
living.
magnet.
yeah, but it's still sort of, what about her religious beliefs?
She was
The mothers,
Catholic, they went to
yeah.
church
She was
together.
Catholic.
They went to church together.
Yeah.
Except that Rose's mother wouldn't drive a car.
Right.
Oh, that's right. that's
She
a
knew
good-
how to
Rose
drive,
does
but
nothing
she
but
wouldn't drive.
Yes, yes, she.
Right,
Well,
exactly.
because her father had been killed in the riot.
Right,
As
been
she-
killed in the
as,
car.
Sissy eventually learns, yeah.
Well,
Right.
Rose's mother was much more focused on Rose,
Correct.
Yeah.
right? Because
And
she waited until she was grown before
Right,
she even
right.
started dating anybody else.
Right,
So she was focused on Rose and focused on her getting through school and finding a husband and getting married.
So
It was
over
thrilled
as
when
a
she got
helicopter
married.
mother, sort of?
Which is the opposite of what Rose was as a mother.
yeah, she was standoffish to Cecilia, or
Well, to say
Sissy.
the least.
Right, that's putting it kindly, yeah,
So sometimes, so
I
her
think the
mother's
word
smothering kind of kept her isolated, and so that Rose didn't really, she got married without really understanding, I guess. She hadn't met enough people, basically. Going
Right.
between church and the guy kept following her to church.
right,
Which is a little spooky.
right.
He seemed very passive to me,
Yeah.
Thomas,
Yeah. Mhm.
extremely passive.
Well, except
And
that,
Rose was domineering in every way. It's
Except
like her
that when
way
he
or no
comes
way.
up in the end
She did
and,
not want to be married to a passive man. That's why she breaks out.
right,
Well, but she married,
Two
son,
passive
and
sons.
he didn't stand up for
Her son's
himself.
not passive.
But it was a necessity for her.
Mm-hmm.
It was a-
Right,
it was
she
a
needed-
ticket. It was a ticket.
Right.
She needed a ticket.
Well, I thought she said she had a sign from God. It was God's will for her to be married to a man she didn't love. And so instead of going back to Thomas Clinton, she just married the man that was there.
the
Somebody
other,
that she didn't love.
the
that
other
was
one
just
she
married.
didn't love,
Thomas.
cause Thomas she didn't love,
Right.
yeah. Okay, that was question 7. Does anybody wanna get up and have a potty break, or get more wine, or more cookies, chocolate, or cheese? This is your time to do that.
I think we're just doing it as we
As we
Judge
need to.
knows us.
Okay, question number 8. Driving is the most important thing you can learn, Rose tells Sissy. It's the secret of the universe. Explain Rose's impulse to drive. How has it been important to her? Why should she recommend it to Sissy, and does it relate to depression, escape, pilgrimage, or something else?
I think it was escape,
Escape?
yeah. I think she just, it was her way of getting away from things that she didn't wanna have to deal with, you
And
know.
why did she lock it up in a garage at Habit?
Well, she always
Right.
wanted to have a way out.
Yeah.
Exactly.
She was hiding her way out to
Well, I mean,
keep
she
from
was-
running
yeah.
again.
Gave her that assurance.
Always available.
Oh, yeah,
That's where she kept her money, in that car.
Yeah,
That's
Right.
yeah.
it was her escape valve. If she needed it, she could take it.
You don't need redemption if you have a good car.
right, right. So that's,
Write that down.
that's good. So it wasn't depression, pilgrimage, or something else, it was escape.
Yeah.
Except that when she gets in the car with Sissy, she doesn't escape, or she escapes less. She opens up to her more.
Right,
Exactly right.
because they talk in the car,
Yeah.
Only place they can talk is in that car.
right,
Only place they can converse, she and
The
Sissy.
only place she's willing to.
I mean, really
guess because
engage each
she
other.
feels enough herself maybe to be able to communicate, I don't know.
right,
She feels free when she's in the car.
right,
That's-
because she's got the road in front of her,
Free and protected.
yeah. Okay, next question. Rose tells us, I have always taken names very seriously. People or places, names of people or places. How does the author use names to enrich the novel? We've already talked about Habit, Kentucky.
Rose of Sharon.
Rose of Sharon,
Rose of Sharon. Did you look that up? I looked it up, all the ways in which Rose of Sharon is meaningful.
tell us about that.
Well, you tell us about that.
Well, I mean, yeah. Rose is a literary symbol, usually femininity, of,
Wasn't Jesus called the Rose of Sharon?
Or Mary was.
Christ called the Rose of Sharon.
I'm trying to remember.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
I think
Yeah, he
It's
was.
from Isaiah, you know,
Right,
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He was called the Rose of Sharon.
and the Rose of Sharon is a beautiful bush
Yep.
with beautiful blooms.
And it was symbolic in Judaism too. The
Right,
Rose of Sharon was, the
Right.
bush itself.
right.
Um,
So I have to tell you a story. When Brian went to Egypt, they were visiting a Coptic nunnery. What is that called?
Convent?
Thank you. And the tour guide said to him, "Would you like to see the burning bush?" From Moses and the burning bush. And Brian said, "Sure." So they walked up, and it was a corner of the building, and there was this big bush. And a bunch of Indians, red dot Indians, had come to see the burning bush, and they were like grabbing pieces of the burning bush off of it.
Oh, man.
And so Brian said the Egyptian SWAT team came in and tried to keep the Indian people from tearing apart the burning bush. But Brian looked down at the ground and he saw a little piece of the burning bush, and he picked it up and he brought it home to me, and I have it in my Bible.
And that relic needs to be put in a cathedral somewhere.
I know, exactly.
A holy relic.
Exactly.
Why were
Okay.
the Indians, why were they so interested?
I have no idea.
Hindus,
I don't know. I don't know, but it was presented to them as a very holy tree, and so they were all wanting to get a piece of it. It was very interesting. Okay, discuss Sister Evangeline. Can you make a case that she is the model for motherhood? Anybody? What do we think about Sister Evangeline?
She's always helpful to everybody that comes to her, isn't she?
She is.
She's what?
She's always helpful to anyone who comes to her.
Yes, right.
She has intuitive spiritual knowledge.
Yes.
She can detect whether that baby's gonna be stillborn or not,
Right,
whether it will be twins or not,
right,
whether it be male or female or not.
right.
And I think Patchett is rightly saying there are people who have uncanny spiritual discernment beyond anything that empirical science can explain.
And she had that.
Absolutely. I think.
Yeah.
And she's like a
But she
mother to
won't-
Rose.
She is like a mother to Rose.
I mean, the whole issue of warning the woman, was it Angela, who had this stillborn child, or not stillborn, well, I guess it was really, but she wouldn't tell her that, and then, and the question is, and then another lie comes out because, what's her name? Forgotten her.
Angie.
No, the, Rose.
Rose.
Doesn't warn her because she wants to protect her, and
Right.
it's not true.
Right.
But if she had told her, and she had, and Angela had told the doctor, then maybe the baby would have survived.
Right.
But so there's this complex set of
Lies.
lies that are trying to shelter her
Right.
from the knowledge that she in fact needed to save the baby.
But they
So-
don't shelter.
But the baby may not have been savable, and that's what the sister might
I
have done.
think the interesting though is that she forgave, I mean, she knew right after the baby died, she knew that just the way they had reacted when she first said, well, yeah, you're gonna have a baby, she knew that I should have picked up on that. I should have understood that the baby was gonna die. And yet, however many years later it was that she came to visit Rose with a child that she'd had several years later.
Mhm.
And they still maintained their friendship, so she knew that Rose and the nun had
So-
Evangeline.
had kept it quiet from her,
Mhm.
but, and I don't know what extent blamed them for maybe it could have been saved, but she forgave Rose.
Mhm.
Interesting about I just caught, when we struggled to remember her name, and I've been struggling to remember it too, evangelist, and I was thinking earlier that although she did have spiritual knowledge, she didn't evangelize it. I mean, she kept it to herself unless you asked her. So she's not really an evangelist then, cause an evangelist
she was.
proclaims, and she wasn't proclaiming, but
Well,
that
she
was her
used
name.
to, but, the other nun told her to stop.
Right,
Bernadette.
yeah,
Right.
Bernadette,
But I thought
Right.
there's something significant about the fact that, she had been the Mother Superior, Evangeline, and then, was
It's all nasty.
set back, you
Right.
know, when, Sister Corrine became the,
right,
Because she was telling too much, I think.
yeah,
yeah,
They didn't wanna deal with that.
yeah.
Although that reminds me of
Yeah,
my
the
favorite
cook.
line in the whole book. And that's when Rose sees Sister Corrine and she says, "She looked to me like a woman who will live forever."
yeah, exactly.
But she doesn't because she maybe did.
Okay, we got 4 more questions. Describe Sissy's evolution from child to greater maturity. How does she progress, and what do you see for her future? For Sissy,
As opposed to what she sees in her ambiguous vision.
right, I guess.
Well, she's much different from her parents. She was the only one asking questions and like wanting to figure things out. So I see her figuring out who her father is and having relations with both fathers. I mean, I said that badly, but good relationships with both fathers.
Right.
And I don't know what else. I don't think she would stay and have it forever. I can see it like short term, yes. 'Cause
Do
she's a
you
teenager.
think that she recognizes that Thomas is her father?
No, I don't think she's figured it out
Not
yet. And I feel
yet.
like she's
Yeah,
going
not
to.
I think
yet.
she's going to.
Yeah,
Words are
that's my
figuring it
feeling, it's
out.
not quite.
I think in the next book, she's gonna figure it out.
And this was her
Or
first
the-
book, so she's written a lot since
she's-
then.
Right,
She's
but it's
blocking
not a
She-
sequel
she
to this,
does know
no,
but doesn't wanna know, so.
right,
Yeah.
right,
Well, I think the last thing she says about it is she was gonna have to write. And as soon as she starts writing him, then she's gonna figure it out.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
And
What
I
I
think she
saw
was
for her
also-
future was the house going out of business, and the nuns leaving, and son and her, if they're still father and daughter, inheriting that property and her running a hotel.
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah.
That sounds
I mean,
great.
But I wondered who was gonna get, I kept wondering, who's gonna get this property, cause we know it
And,
belongs to
and
son.
who's gonna come to the hotel?
We'll just have to get the creek going again.
Get the creek
Right.
going.
There you go,
You gotta run a pipe out there.
Without the magic
Yeah.
Like
sign.
Ruby Falls.
right,
Son can do that.
that's right, there you go.
What about that magic spring though? I mean, that's,
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
that's how the book began,
yeah,
was
right.
with that magic spring, the water.
And so we get this sort of magical
It was a
realist.
miracle,
there's no-
miraculous.
There's no, first-person narrative for that either. right?
No,
Yeah.
Right.
Do either of the rest of the questions that you got have something to do with God, having a plan for our lives, about God, giving signals about God, having a will that it's up to you to figure out what it is? and
no,
follow
but that
it?
will be the 4th question after my last 3.
Okay, that's the one I've been dying to ask.
I was gonna
Okay.
mention about the spring, there's a whole, there's springs all over Ireland and Scotland, right? And that go all the way back to the Celts and before that to
Yeah,
Paleolithic times. And many times they'll build a church over that spring because the spring is already considered to be a holy spot.
Yeah.
Right. And it was always a holy spot where the water came up and where you did rituals or whatever.
But it,
So,
but it was always there, whereas this spring comes and then disappears.
right,
Um,
it leaves.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a lever
And it's
too.
cured. It leaves, a lever, right.
Well, as we make too light of these things, it's easy to. There are still such springs in this country.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The most famous of which is in Arkansas, called Hot Springs.
Oh, yeah.
And I had a letter today, email, from a dear friend who has severe arthritis. And he had gone to Hot Springs to take the baths.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
And had found immense help.
Oh.
There's a fantastic one.
that's
Right
wonderful.
above, Taos, in between Taos and Colorado. Oh, there's a great one.
There are a lot of hot springs out in Idaho, but, but they're too hot for me to get into because they can, set off AFib.
Yeah.
So my cardiologist told me, it was very frustrating.
He said, your cardiologist said, don't do it?
Right, right. He said, if the temperature's over 202,
You can't do it.
you can't do it, so.
Well, a lot of times the water has lithium too.
What?
The water has lithium.
Well, that's a
Water
good,
has-
Well, I don't think it was
lithium is a
lithium in
good
that
thing,
case,
isn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
But-
so you can see why if someone who is having problems, maybe mental problems, if they're drinking lithium.
Yes, I know,
Right.
I know it doesn't sound right to me. I'm halfway through my wine, so I'm getting parboiled here.
Oh, yeah.
There are records of hundreds of.
But the voice in that first section, that little first brief section, is very rural kind of
Yeah.
country, or like the original Habit voice maybe, speakers, whereas
Yeah.
the others are more educated.
I would have loved it if she came back to that voice that was in the beginning,
And the spring
Yeah.
again.
Mhm.
in the spring.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
we can't tell the author what to do.
Only Hollywood can.
Right,
Yeah.
for the movie.
Yeah,
I thought the plotting was brilliant.
yeah.
There is a movie of this book, I'm sorry. I didn't-
There is?
There is?
Yeah, it was, 1998, I think, I saw.
Really?
Of
Who's
this?
in it?
You saw what?
He said there was a movie from.
Well, because this is from 1992.
Right.
Yeah, it's in 1998, I think it was, it might have been made for TV, I don't know, I hadn't watched it. I saw it when I was looking up.
We
the
should all
movie.
watch it.
Oh, yeah, we
That'd be fun.
Anyway, I'm sorry, go ahead. You were saying?
I didn't know there was.
No, you were saying before I interrupted you.
No, I just saying that these springs are authentic.
We had a springs in Black Mountain, North Carolina. It was called Lithium Springs because they said the water had lithium in it.
Mm.
And people who had mental illness would go and fill up their 5-gallon things of water
Mm.
coming out of the springs, and it would help them.
Oh, and so it's, if it's manic depressive, that would help. them,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, 3 more questions, and then we're gonna get to yours. How would you evaluate Rose's treatment of her 2 husbands? Do you sympathize with Thomas Clinton and son? Can you understand Rose's behavior? Is she emotionally detached, selfish, cruel, or just an independent woman?
Emotionally detached.
I agree.
Selfish.
Self.
No,
Selfish.
emotionally detached.
Emotionally detached?
Independent, I mean, all of the above, I guess, yeah.
She worked for free, feeding these people.
Right. And
And
they
she
never
did
paid her.
it to the max. She didn't just put slop on the table.
No,
She
she made good
educated herself.
food.
She worked hard at doing something well. And she didn't get a penny for it.
No.
For years. She
Yeah,
never
she
got
was
paid.
dedicated to that work.
And they treated her like she was a servant.
Right.
Which she was. But
She
she
didn't
gave
know.
herself to that servitude, so I think she was doing penance
Right.
You think she
What was
was
she
what?
doing penance for?
for all her lying.
Huh?
She says, I have no remorse about my lying from the very start. I don't feel any guilt.
See, I think Rose is all about Rose. Whatever it takes to make her float, she does what makes herself happy. Whether it's that cooking that she got into or driving the car for freedom. Rose is about Rose.
She doesn't
when-
really care about anybody else's
Right.
feelings.
She's
No.
about
Huh.
I think you're too hard on her, I think it's mixed.
I think it's mixed
Yeah.
too.
Her first husband was named Thomas, is that?
Yeah.
Thomas.
Yeah, Thomas.
So when he came back, when he came
Right,
to
at the
have
end of
it,
the book.
when he had his wedding, he still wore his wedding ring.
Right,
But the other thing he said is, she never cooked at home.
right,
Like, she had never cooked for him,
Yeah.
right.
yeah.
So cooking is this labor of love, even though it isn't directly.
Well, it was a labor of love.
Later on,
Labor
It was
later on in life.
Or
I
for
think
the
just
whole-
like she lost herself in the driving,
Mhm.
she could lose herself in her cooking.
Yeah, right.
And it was succor for her.
Yeah,
But notice in her marriage, she and boy never live in the same place.
right, she moved back to the other
Exactly.
place, yeah.
She doesn't want to be closed in.
She.
That's her great fear. She wants to break out. She wants
And
to
no
try.
intimacy.
And what
And
made her
intimacy
feel
meant-
that
Do
way?
you think she's also
Trapped.
afraid of having another child?
Possibly.
Say it again.
Is she afraid of having another child also?
I don't think that even enters, well, I could be wrong. I don't
Yeah.
see that as the issue, but it could be.
Okay, here's another question. Rose advises Billy, you should do whatever you want to, whatever you can live with best. Does Rose apply this philosophy to her own decisions? And we've already answered that part.
Yeah.
She does whatever she can do best.
Whatever comes, whomever else gets in the way. Tough for them.
Yeah.
It's survival for her. She's in
And-
survival mode, the
And
whole
why do we
book.
think why does she have that sort of setup in her life? Is it because of her mother, her father?
How can you
her-
explain mental illness? She cannot sustain a relationship with another human being, period, no matter who it is. That's a mental illness.
Yes.
No, because I think she does with Evangeline, Sister Evangeline.
Yeah, I think so too.
Very much so.
She has a relationship with Sister Evangeline, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
She cared about her, but she wasn't close to her.
Yes, she was, I think.
Oh,
she
yeah,
was
they were very close.
You think?
She carried her around, helped her into bed every day.
But they didn't talk.
No, well,
They never
No. but
really
but there
talked
was
to,
a
they
form of
didn't share
communication
their
going on.
lives with each other.
So
Sister
there
Evangeline knew all about her,
Mhm.
but they never talked about it.
No,
I mean-
but they talked in sort of oblique ways, I mean, they were
Yeah.
sort of,
Could you remember before she ran away, she'd gotten that letter and then she wanted to talk to Evangeline
Mhm.
alone.
yes.
And I don't know how much she disclosed to her, but enough that Evangeline was pretty troubled about it.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
she knew a
right.
certain amount.
And she would, and Evangeline was lying in a sense because she didn't warn anybody else,
Right,
so.
right.
Well, it's kind of like a therapist telling you.
Well, yes, I
telling
mean,
other people
I
somebody
think she
else's
did the right
secrets.
thing somehow, but I don't know, but,
Yeah, it was sad to me that Rose would leave her too. I mean, like, just like avoid, I guess, seeing Thomas or, you know, whatever fallout was gonna happen from that visit that, cause she did seem so dedicated to her of all people, and then she was willing to leave her.
To get away from Thomas's visit,
Mhm.
yeah,
Just get away from being trapped.
right.
She would be
Anything
free.
that corners, anything that
Yeah.
confines,
Yeah.
anything that doesn't let her break out.
Okay,
Now,
my
as far as
last,
her philosophy, I don't mind people doing everything that they want. My advice to them is change what you want.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, my last question, and then we'll go to your question. Some readers may find an orderly resolution to the story, perhaps in Sissy's last thoughts about staying at St. Elizabeth's, or Son's certainty that Sissy made everything worthwhile. Do you find order in the ending of the book? Anybody?
It was very unsatisfying to me, and that's why I blocked it. You didn't remember the ending.
What did you want to happen in the ending that didn't happen?
I wanted them to resolve these issues. I
Who
wanted
them?
the truth to come out between Son
And
And-
Sissy?
and Sissy and Rose. However they did or didn't involve Thomas, I wanted the truth to be, and then resolve it. Nothing got resolved between anybody. Nobody resolved.
It's not a Hollywood ending.
You don't have to like be happily ever after, but be honest with each other. Nobody was
Oh,
ever
when
not a
you
liar.
can't be honest with each other in a book called The
The
Liars.
patron saint of liars.
I mean,
Exactly.
That would ruin the whole thing.
Right.
It wasn't the patron saint of truth tellers.
in my view, that would have been the absolute ruin of the book, to have it tied together that way.
Yeah.
Because I believe that Patchett understands in a profound way what the Greeks call tragedy.
Yeah,
Tragedy does not mean bad things happen to good people. That's
Yeah.
trite. Tragedy means, in the Greek sense, we're undone by our virtues far more than our vices. This woman has the great virtue of saying, I'm not going to live a humdrum existence where I just put one foot in front of the other. I do things predictably the way everybody else does. I go along to get along. No, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna break free from that, even if it means, and especially if it means, I remain a lifelong liar. And she's the patron saint, it seems to me, of a Greek tragic vision.
Wow,
But
that's
there's some
good.
relationship to a Greek, or maybe not a Greek, but I kept getting the title of this book mixed up. And I thought it was something like the patron king of liars. And that kept running through my mind. And then I realized it was The Winter's Tale. There's this guy called Autolycus. I looked this up because I had this dim sort of feeling that, who is this perpetual liar and thief, and he's sort of the patron of all liars and thieves.
Oh,
And he goes around, spreading false tales about everybody, and steals things. But somehow or the other, I guess, in The Winter's Tale, he generates, there's a happy ending to that because it's a sort of romance. And the lost child is found, and here the lost child sort of remains lost. That is, Sissy is still lost because she's not quite figured out what her identity is, I guess, who her parents are or something, but.
So it might be that story on its ear.
Yeah,
Patchett put that story on its ear and turned everything around.
well,
So-
but-
Lost child is always
that
lost.
story
All
has
the children
that
are
story has a
lost.
happy ending, but, I mean, that Shakespeare play, but, this has this very ambiguous.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean by putting it on its ear.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So we've gotten to the end of my 14 questions. You all have done splendidly. And we want to go to your question.
So the first question I had hardly gotten into the book, was about God's will and God's voice.
Okay,
And how people, Rose, interpreted what she was supposed to do according to God
what signs?
was some sort of sign, and she kept looking for evidence of what God
What
wanted
those
her
signs were,
to
right?
do. And I mean, I grew up in a very conservative, evangelical group, and it was as though your chore from birth to death is to find out what God's will is, and if you're in the
In your
center
life.
of His will, what He has, He's got a map for your life. He's got this map, and every turn you're supposed to take, every decision you make, there's a right way and a wrong way. Like people, I was in high school and everybody was praying about, what college should I go to? What college does God want me to go to? And, if I go to the wrong college, I'll be out of His will.
What was your denomination growing up?
They were Baptist mostly, but there was interdenominational.
Yeah.
But does that sound foreign to anybody here?
Did you get a sign of where you were supposed to go to college?
I got a sign for where I wanted to go.
There you go.
I was kind of rebellious.
Where did you
No, but
go?
see, I listened to another Baptist give this talk that says, that totally debunked that in front of all these people who were going, oh, that's, he said, God doesn't have a place where you're supposed to go and turn and do and be. All He says is, take me with you. So,
Take what?
Take me with you.
Oh, mhm.
If you walk with God, you're taking Him to this college or that college, or this marriage or that marriage, or whatever it might be. But if you take God with you, that's all He wants.
The better prayer is, God, take me with you. Not me, take God with me. It's a different proposition altogether.
Yeah, but you have to, if you're saying, God, take me with you, then He
That's
needs
through
to
the
know whether
cross, of
you're supposed to
course.
go to Kentucky or Tennessee. I mean, how
No,
are you
that
gonna
puts you
figure
on-
that out? Is God gonna send you a sign?
I put you on a cross.
What puts you on the cross?
God to take us with Him.
Oh, right,
which is, of course, the heart of the gospel.
right,
But all the way through there, people are looking and interpreting signs,
right.
and they're getting them wrong,
Yeah.
or things don't turn out when they think they're doing what God wants them to do. And,
And Rose was looking for signs
Mhm.
in the book.
Oh, yeah, everybody, they're all looking for signs.
Right.
And
And they
even-
might be misinterpreting them.
And today, I will tell you, this day, and I don't mean today, but nowadays, I have a hard time praying for God to make somebody well. Because I don't think he makes you well because somebody prayed hard enough, but not you because nobody prayed hard enough for you. I don't get that. I don't think God plays games with us like that.
Well, I don't,
So it's about God's will. It bothered me throughout the whole book, and to me, that was one of the themes, the biggest theme, was
May I
all these
suggest-
people trying to do what God wanted them to do.
If we want an answer to that profound question, read the greatest living theologian in the Western world, who happens to be an Anglican, named Rowan Williams,
Yep,
the former Archbishop of Canterbury.
yep.
Read his little book called Tokens of Trust. It's about answering just that question.
Tokens of trust.
I pray for God to be with you and for his comfort to be with you and for you to feel his comfort and his love, but not for God to do something for you, because I just think that's
well, I think
favoritism.
that's the way
People say, well, you know, I had an accident on the way to the airport, so I missed that flight. That was God's will. Well, what about all the people who didn't miss the flight when the plane went down? I mean,
An ex-fundamentalist is always a fundamentalist, because you're defining yourself against the enemy. And when you define yourself against the enemy,
Yeah.
you're an image of the enemy. Sorry. I grew up in the same world you did, so I know, I
Yeah,
know that world.
Just thinking about signs and epiphany, and it's about a sign from God. We saw his star at its rising, and we have come to worship him. So, does God speak through signs? Yes, it seems to be. But also, I was thinking about Jesus said, unbelievers ask for signs. My followers will walk by faith. So signs, a demand for a sign is not a walking in faith.
there's a place.
But that doesn't mean though that God doesn't use signs.
I
Right.
understand what you're saying.
There's a place where they're talking about Thomas, I've forgotten where it is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's
And
doubting Thomas.
Yeah.
that's very crucial, I think, to
Doubting
raise
Thomas?
it. Yeah,
Oh,
right.
I love that
Because if you're
part.
looking for signs,
Well, think of this thing.
you know, everybody else was looking for signs, and then he, so that you have this complicated issue of wanting
And think of the
specific
great
signs.
saying in our Lord, tempt not the Lord your God. To tempt God is to say, you give me a sign, and then I'll do your will.
Mhm.
That is the essence of idolatry, of course. And so, that's why we ask in the Lord's Prayer, lead us not to do that stupid thing.
Right. Well, it's another great Anglican, John Wesley, who said, he famously said, people who are looking for signs just don't want to do what's clearly written in the scriptures. So I was looking for a
Nothing's
sign.
clearly written.
right.
Nothing's really clear.
So does anybody else have a question which has not been asked or answered tonight that you would like to bring up?
I'd just like to thank you for recommending this book.
Good.
It was a good book. I haven't quite finished it, Bob filled
Okay,
me in.
you will.
I know, but, it's good.
Good. And speaking of books, the next one is Geraldine Brooks' People of the Book. It's much shorter. It's only oops, that's not it. 372 pages. It's not.
Not short.
It's not 400 and something pages.
Small print.
But so this is this is the next book, Geraldine Brooks, People of the Book. And then I sent you all the email today. If I don't have your email, if you did not get an email today, come up here and give me your email, and I will send you, you'll be included on the e-distribution list for reminding you of what the book is and when we're meeting, blah, blah, blah. So, and I've also asked for people to give me their suggestions on books so that you all can be more invested since you all are suggesting the books. So, so far I have gotten Being Mortal by Atul Gawande, or if that's how you say it, Where You Once Belonged, Kent Heru, Bright in the Corner Where You Are, Fred Chappell, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, Rebecca Skloot, The Overstory, Richard Powers, Murder in the Cathedral, and Ordinary Grace by William Kent Kruger. So if you have another book that you would like to suggest that we read, come up here and talk to me. And if you are not on my e-distribution list, come up here and talk to me and give me your email. And have another glass of wine or a chocolate cookie or a piece of cheese. Okay, maybe, but have a chocolate cookie because Brian and I don't want to eat all those.
Take them to choir next time. Those basses love cookies.
Okay, maybe I'll take them to choir. So did anybody not get the email?
I got it.
You didn't? Come up here. What is your email?
It's
So where have you been that you just-
JMP
England and Kenya.
WOLF